Darkness kills, destroys the will. Find a spark, make hearts thrill. Hear the tales of time so grim. Shine a light, don't let it dim. Heather Brown downtown, bound. True crime story she's found. In the shadows, secret stay. Need a light that finds the way.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Defeating the Darkness, true crime stories with Downtown Heather Brown. That's me, your host. I'm a former homicide and sexual assault prosecutor in Orange County, California, and now I'm hosting this podcast called Defeating the Darkness. And I'm really super excited about today's podcast because with us, we have one of the brightest shining lights in the darkest places. Sandy Pendleton-Dorton is with us today. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for having me. I feel honored to be here.
No, I'm honored to have you on my show. And when you hear about Sandy and all the amazing things that she does, you're going to be like, what? Give this girl the key to the city. So Sandy and I met. We met
probably a few years back when we were doing some street outreach, I believe, wasn't it?
Yes, some street outreach.
Yeah.
So today's topic, I should warn you before we get going, is a dark topic. I mean, they're all kind of dark on my podcast, let's be honest, but this one is particularly dark, and I'm actually going to have a little series going. So this is going to be one of at least 3 episodes where we're going to talk about a really huge problem that we have all over our country and all over our world, but even here in Orange County, California. And so Sandy's here to talk to us about the problem that we have of human trafficking, which for those of you who don't even know what that means, it's basically modern day slavery. It is where girls are taken against their will and they're forced to engage in sex labor and have sex in exchange for money or other compensation, and a pimp or a trafficker or a slave owner, as I like to call them, actually receives the proceeds. So Sandy and I met. I work for a ministry, an anti-human trafficking ministry, and Sandy and I met in an outreach program where you actually gave the training to the gals.
Exactly. I feel like during that time, Heather, what was evolving during that time, we were doing street outreach, and that was still part of our conversation, because something is really powerful when you're interacting face to face with a victim on the streets.
So before we even get into that, please tell our listeners, because some of them don't know, like they don't know that right here, like in Irvine, California, there's brothels, there's women being forced to sell their bodies in exchange for money that some other, generally a man, but sometimes women, get the proceeds from. So Sandy, when you say street outreach, what does that mean? You're reaching out to the girls on the street?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And sometimes people ask me, okay, how did you even get into this line of work? Because it just seems so odd, and especially in an Orange County community, they don't see anything going on. Everything looks perfect all the time. And I just want to briefly overview how it even started, that calling, as it does happen, I think, for all of us on our heart. My background is a middle school counselor. And
that's God's work right there.
And well, let's add to it middle school, So that was that hormonal years, that we all can remember in just such, fun ways, but loved my job actually. But during that time, I was doing faith-based outreach on my own as a volunteer. And a young girl crossed my path and on our online exchange, and she was sharing her story with me. And over weeks and even a matter of months, she was sharing what had happened to her. And brief overview is she was raised by her dad. Her mom died when she was an infant. And her dad was sexually abusing her. And he got her pregnant. And she wanted to run as far as she could away from where she lived.
Wait a minute. How old was this girl, Sandy? How old was this girl?
She was 11 years old.
So 11 years old, her mom dies, dad's now having sex with her, and he gets her pregnant.
Exactly. And on top of it, as I'm trying to reach out, and it was clear to me she was in Southern California, but she said she had run from Maine, which is to be as far away from her father as she could get. She hitchhiked her way on her own, however she did it, got out here to Southern California. And I was like taken aback. Here, Heather, as we do, I lived in my bubble. thought, how could this even be happening? And it just caught me and gripped me. She had her little baby girl on the streets. She had surrounded herself with a group of, I'm going to say safe people, which to her were safe. It was older girls that were also on the streets. But at that time, they were also being trafficked. They helped her, and I wanted to help her get out. And just the story I was telling my kids, I can't believe this is happening. And so, but she said to me, when I was saying, we could get the police, I had a detective. I was actually brought into my circle, and my principal at the school allowed me to do, seeing how important it was and how much this was, catching me off guard and wanting to assist her.
Okay, hold on. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
And I apologize. I do interrupt sometimes, but I want to get some of the details for our listeners. So how was it that you actually came in contact with this particular girl, the one who had been impregnated by her dad? You said street outreach. What does that mean?
Well, actually, let me back up, clarify my story. I was working as a middle school counselor. I was doing actually online outreach, faith-based ministries.
What does that mean, online outreach?
It was Greg Laurie's Harvest. I was being a counselor, faith-based, trying to reach out to people that would write into us saying, hey, I'm confused about their faith or wanting to know more about God. I was doing that on the side. Okay. This is before I got into the street team. So she crossed my path online.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
This is how it started with me. This is what, because people say, how did it start with you?
This is what planted the seed
this
for
is what
you
planted the seed.
to dedicate, which we're going to find out in a minute, but to dedicate your life to helping other girls just like this one.
Yeah.
But so this is the first time you're like, what?
Exactly.
But you met this girl online.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so she's telling you her story about how her dad impregnated her. She had a baby on the street.
Right.
And at that point, how old is she when she's talking to you?
She's 11 years old.
She's still 11.
She's 11 years old.
She had a baby at 11.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. And it was just, I was just dumbfounded with the whole thing. Like, what kind of world are we living in this? I know it happens, but sometimes when it happens right in front of you and someone's reaching out. Now, on top of that, Heather, I was trying to get her the help. I knew I could see the location she was in. I knew she was somewhere in Orange County. But she said to me, which is another layer of, oh my goodness. I said, the police can help you. We can get you to a safe place. This is, we can get you to safety and all of that. But she said, no, I don't want anything to do with the police. And she said that because her dad was a detective in Maine. He was a police detective. And he said, he's looking for me. So again, that was another wake-up moment, like, oh my goodness.
There's a whole nother level of distrust.
Yeah.
So going to the law enforcement at that point was not an option.
No, it wasn't for her.
So then what happened?
So that was back in 2016. I kept in contact with her. And then somehow she did find a safe place. She had her baby, and the good news about this story overview, a really good family that I found out down the road adopted her. And so her little girl couldn't have got a more divine connection with the family that wanted a little girl. So that was, but what gripped my heart, Heather, was like, I got to do something. That's where my mission of, so when I stepped out of being a middle school counselor back in 2017, this interaction happened 2016. So in 2017, I just said, that's when I said, I got to do something. And right then, again, I think of divine appointments, for lack of a better way of saying it. I got a call from a team that was going to start working in Santa Ana on the streets. So I said, sign me up. I was there. They were ground level, just getting started. And we would go out every Friday night in a very high trafficking area in Santa Ana, off of Hazard and Harbor and all that. An area
Hazard and Harbor
in
Santa Ana, high trafficking area. So there's a
Exactly.
lot of women that are being sold on those streets
Yes.
here in Orange County and Santa Ana.
Right. And it was during that time, exactly 2017. They were, in fact, it had been going on for years. And the residents were getting pretty fed up with because what's happening here and what people need to understand, there's a demand for trafficking. And the trafficking demand is the ones buying the girls for sex. So those are what they call Johns, in the lack of a kind of a slang word. They're the buyers, the sex buyers.
So the John's the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then generally speaking, it's a woman who's being sold.
Exactly.
Are there men that are being sold as well? Boys that are being sold?
Yes, there are. Sometimes the only few, in all honesty, that we saw out there were ones that were kind of like cross-dressing, transgender. We never saw a lot of them. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does. I have helped victims that have called our hotline that are male victims, but for the most part, it's women. It's young girls, and I think the thing that's most important to point out that people need to understand: they're trafficking the vulnerable. They're looking for that. That's what they call grooming, that crack that they can break open to fill that void and be that dream that they think that person wants to have. So some of these girls that were out on the streets, when we started working that street area, we talked to them, and we go out there every Friday night. And
so, and what? How do you dress? Are you just regular clothes?
we were just regular clothes. It was cold. It was like from 11:30 at night to 2 a.m. we'd be out there. Unfortunately, the girls were not dressed with a lot on, obviously because of the line of work they were trying to do to find dates that night that they were obligated to do to make money because they have to make their quota.
So they're scantily clad.
Yes.
In cold conditions.
Yes.
And they're just, and this is, I'm assuming, before things went crazy on the internet in 2017.
Yep. It's that, the back pages, knowing where trafficking is happening, because what we learned, there's like a circuit. It's kind of an inner dark circle, because the traffickers would bring them from Vegas, San Francisco, down Bay Area, down to LA, and then they bring them to Orange County, and then to San Diego. There was like a circuit they would run, and then we talked to the girls, and they would say, well, it's really bad in LA. You should go to LA. And I thought, oh, they're trying to help the girls in LA. But I said, well, why are they bringing you to Orange County? And they said, because our traffickers know there's more money in Orange County.
They can get more for sex in Orange County.
Exactly, from the buyers.
Okay, so there's a lot of things I want to unpack here, especially for our listeners who don't really know much about this area. Yeah. You were saying that there's a circuit, right? So there's Orange County, LA, San Diego, San Francisco,
right,
and
Vegas,
and the traffickers, which are the men that are selling, or women that are selling, young girls and boys, and women, right? It doesn't just have to be children; it's adults as well, over 18, They are moving them around to different areas. Why is it that they move them, for our listeners?
Well, they move them for a few reasons. They want to make money. They're going to move them around to keep them captive, to know that they don't want them to settle in and get to know a sphere of people. So they keep them, because when they're in the process of that grooming, which is, again, trying to manipulate them for that control issue, they want to separate that person from their family, from their friends, from people that are close to them, because then they can kind of keep them captive. Like, I'm the only one in your life. I'm the one that you need, because they have the illusion of being the boyfriend.
They sell them as if they're the boyfriend.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think maybe we should back it up even further. Yeah. Where are these traffickers, these men and women that are selling girls and some boys? Where are they finding these people to sell? The people that they're selling, where are they finding them?
Well, sadly, it could be anywhere. And anyone can be a trafficker on top of that. Some of the cases I've worked have been their own family
selling their own children.
Yes.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, it is.
I want to burn them alive.
It is. It's heartbreaking.
Pray for me, because I do have evil thoughts about those people.
Yeah, there was a case that we were working. It was a high school student, and her mom would check her out at noon a couple times a week for whatever appointment she said that her daughter had to go to. And she was setting up dates for her daughter because she had a drug problem. And that was her way of keeping her money coming in. So her daughter would go and have these dates, and she would take the money from her, and then she'd drop her back off to school. Took a while for the high school to figure that out. They did, thankfully. But it's sad to see, but that does happen in these broken families. And I think it's that generational brokenness in a family that happens in the world that we live in. And they utilize their own children. Another way, that's one way. Another thing is they actually, in their quest to find whatever they want, in their life, if they have a drug habit or whatever's going on in their personal life, they'll just try to manipulate people for the sheer sick goal of profit. So they can attack kids online. I think the most eye-opening thing, Heather, right now in the world we live in, because when I was growing up, we didn't have phones to, we had a phone on the wall, I mean, I'm really dating
I had
myself.
one too.
But yeah, it wound up. We had to unwind the cord. And so that's, but things were safer then. We've got kids now. We see it all the time, that's how they interact. But what traffickers know now, and they're doing it for whatever their, motivation is, it's for sheer profit. And they'll look at that victim as a product.
One thing that I think is very important for people to understand, and why human trafficking is such a big, huge industry here especially in the United States, and it is all over the world, obviously, right? Bangkok, Thailand is actually the sex capital of the world, and more people are, bought, purchased, sold there than anywhere. However, here, when you have drugs, right? Let's say you're a drug dealer, right? People deal drugs because they want to make money.
Right.
When you sell your drugs, you have to go buy more drugs.
Exactly.
You have to replenish your supply.
Exactly.
If you are selling a girl or a child or a woman or a boy, if you're selling a human being, you can sell them over and over and over again, and you don't have to replenish your supply.
Exactly. That's so true, Heather. In fact, jumping off that notion, the gangs have been the drug traffickers and their cartels, but now a lot of the gang activity is getting into trafficking for that very reason, because of not being able to have the supply of the drug being used one time.
And if you get caught with a girl, it's like, oh, this is my girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
You just say, this is my girlfriend. Unless you're caught actually selling them, or, it takes a little more investigation, versus you get caught with a pound of cocaine on you. It's like, whose drugs, right? Those are my drugs, versus this is my girlfriend.
Right.
So, a human being is not an illegal substance, versus cocaine is.
Exactly.
You don't need more of it. You just, can sell that same person over and over and over again.
Exactly.
And then, obviously the traffickers will get more than one girl that they're selling at the same time, so that so they can increase and multiply the money that they're making. But and it's definitely more subject to interpretation than, you got a big, bag full of fentanyl, or,
And to add an extra layer to that, the girls that get coerced to get into a gang, we have to remember to understand they're probably lacking they're looking at that gang, as people do, as a family, and so all of a sudden they find a place that they could be somebody. And so there's all this mental trauma and manipulation that goes on, because sometimes that young female does not realize that, okay, they have a family now, but now they're going to be used for the entire gang, either for their own sexual purposes or the way they initiate them. And this is how you are going to be a part of our gang. That's what you're going to go do. And so now they're caught into this unbelievable darkness of gang activity and risk, and with their own lives every day, and with the gang. The gang obviously is not there to protect them. They're there to utilize her as a product to get what they need, and that's her place in the gang.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I saw when I was a prosecutor, because, obviously we prosecuted these types of crimes from the traffickers. We started after people became way more educated and the laws became stricter about human trafficking. We would go after the traffickers. We used to focus on the little guy, the John, the one guy he's the one exchange where he's purchasing sex for money, or the prostitute, right, who was is selling her body for money. But now that law enforcement has become much more educated about this area and this topic, they have taken a more informed approach and a more compassionate approach towards the girls, towards the people who are being trafficked. And they realize, like, wait a minute, they might be, 21 now, but they were 13 when they started.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I saw when I was a DA was a lot of the girls got snatched up at either the bus station or the train station because they had run away from home, because maybe their uncle or their dad was having sex with them. Right. And they were, they wanted to escape something horrible. And like you said, the traffickers will find the girls who are very vulnerable and in a position where they need somebody, they need somewhere to stay, they need food, and they appeal to them. They call them
Exactly.
Romeo pimps.
Yep.
Right. Where
Exactly.
they will pretend
Right.
like they're their boyfriend.
Right.
Oh, hey, baby, you know, you need a place to stay. You can come
Exactly.
stay with me.
Right.
You want to go get your nails done? Mm-hmm. You want a new pair of kicks, new pair of sneakers? So this grooming that you're talking
Exactly.
about, right?
They shower them with all kinds of clothing, like you said, all those things to bring them into the way they can manipulate them, because there's going to be that flip that's going to happen once they realize. But based off that, Heather, sometimes what they do when they see they've started that grooming process, they'll test the waters a little further. And then it's like, hey, baby, we need some money. I want us to, have a place together and all that. And I've been doing a year so beautiful, maybe they'll introduce them to a strip club and say, you could do that. You're so pretty, and all that. So just one time, hon, and then so they start seeing how far they can push it and get her to buy in to whatever he's trying to get her to do. Once they start doing that, or another flip, it's just one time with my friend. We need the money. If you really love me, you will do this. And they know once they can get them to do it one time, then they've got them.
And do you think that's because a lot of shame sets in from the victim?
Absolutely. Because so many times too, Heather, when we get those callers coming in, there's tears. There's embarrassment. They say, I'm so sorry. I can't believe and we tell them, this is not your fault. And and this was wrong. And we're going to help you. Because on top of that, they don't even see themselves as a victim. They don't identify they've been a victim, because again, they see him as a boyfriend, even though all of a sudden when it turns on them and it gets abusive and they start withholding things and they get violent, they'll always come back around with, oh, hey, baby, I love you. It's fine. I know. Sometimes you make me get angry. And then they have all this shame and manipulation going on emotionally and, even physically for them too. If they're being beaten, there was a case I was just working and she got her front tooth knocked out. And it took a while for her to leave her boyfriend. But the violence can get in there, but they don't know where else to go. And that's when you're trying to help them on this path, you need to come in and be able to feel you're giving them a place of safety and trust, because they don't trust anyone, because their trust has been broken. So yeah, it's a really complicated web trying to get them to know we're there to help them sometime on that. And because of the manipulation, the shame, the guilt, and all the things, because they will also, to add to that, will make them do things, say, steal things or something where they're breaking the law, and they can hold that over their head. Like, you can't talk to a police. They're not going to help you. You've broken the law there. So they play all these mind games on them.
A lot of mind games going on.
A
lot of
trauma.
psychological manipulation.
Yep.
And there's just so many layers to to that onion,
Yeah. So true.
Especially when a lot of the reason that the girl was vulnerable in the first place was because usually there's some underlying trauma that happened first.
Right.
There's usually some molestation, perhaps a rape, perhaps even just, a stepdad who treats, the other children more favorably, and they feel, disenfranchised from the family. So they seek love in all the wrong places.
Exactly.
And that's how these Romeo pimps get involved and then turn these girls out. So when they sell the girl, or they convince the girl to sell her body, that's called being turned out, right?
Right. Exactly.
And
exactly.
What's the, just to give the listeners some of the lingo, so you're a little more versed in this area, we have the Johns.
Right.
We have the girls. Mm-hmm. Is there a name for the girls?
Gosh, we've called them victims because we see them as victims. They don't identify always as victims. But then we like to flip it into survivor because we want to empower them.
Yes.
We always want to give them that, we don't want to hold that over their head. But the reason the word victim is used because they have been victimized, but it's not their identity. We don't want them to hold on and stay at that point, that landing spot, but they're a survivor. But it's because they don't see themselves as being victimized and as being manipulated.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's a good reminder. And so then these different areas. One thing I know that when they take away the girl's like identification, or let's say they pick up this young girl who's run away from home, right, at the train station. They generally, don't even have a driver's license yet. So they don't have identification. And if you think about it, if you take a bus and you're like 13 and you get on a bus and you go to, California, like you have no idea where you are. Or you're, take a train somewhere and you don't know the streets, you don't know where you are. And then once you start like knowing someone or meeting someone, that's when you become connected to people. And they're like, oh, where are you from? What's your story? And that's exactly what the trafficker does not want. So they want to make it as transitory as possible. And they move them around. It's called the circuit, right? Where they work a circuit. And then the street where they actually, like, let's say they come to Orange County and they work out on a certain street. Is that called something?
It's called like the blade, or it's also a circuit of the street, but it's kind of, they call it the blade, for example.
Or the track.
The track, excuse me, that's right.
The blade, no, they call it the blade or the track.
Exactly.
Right? So you're turned out onto the blade or turned out onto the track.
Yeah. And one that's still just rampantly running with prostitution is out in Figueroa. And that's referred to as
in
the blade.
Downtown LA.
Downtown LA. And there's blocks and blocks and blocks of girls that are turned out to work. And the traffickers are there to intimidate. When we worked out in the track areas in Santa Ana, they were around. But they thought we were, innocuous, like we were just the church people helping out. So we were there to get a little time.
And is it all women that are out there?
Well, no, actually with us, because it was run with a real security in mind, not only just for us as a team, but for the girls that were out there as well. So the men would be trained as our security. We'd be on Bluetooth, so we could hear each other's thing and stay safe. But they would not interact with the girls. They kept at a safe, like 6 feet distance. In fact, it was asked a few times, like, who are they? And we say, oh, they're just here. They're like security for us. And for you guys, they go, oh, okay. And they were all okay with it. So they weren't interacting with them. That wasn't their role. But there was a time too, a couple times, one in particular I remember, because there was gang activity outside that track area in Santa Ana. They came into the track we were working, there was some gunfire going on.
Oh my goodness.
So that was a code blue, code red, or whatever you want to call it, and we would.
I think that's code red, Sandy.
I think it's code red. Yeah, I call
shots
it code
fired.
Red.
Code red.
Yeah, whatever we call it. But we knew we had to leave, so we all got back, and that's where. But safety and security were always the foremost. But that was, again, it's really powerful to be able to connect with them when you can one-on-one.
So what's happening when you go out there? So you go out on the street and you're like, hi, you just introduce yourself, or do you give them information? Do you pray for them? What do you do when you're out there? Tell us about
question. That. We had our bags of stuff. We were known as the church group, but in the bags would be things like hand warmers, because again, as we were saying, they're scantily dressed. It doesn't matter what time of night and what time of the year it is. Even raining, we'd have umbrellas one time, I remember, but we give hand warmers just to keep warm, and just granola bars, some food, some sanitary products if they needed, some hand sanitizers. But the main goal, that was to connect with them. Our goal was, we had all these bracelets, kind of similar to this.
Oh, what you see right here?
Yeah,
that's why we brought these here
for
everyone to see.
And why I've continued this with handmade gemstones. But we had bracelets, and at that time, we didn't have the Dream hotline number, which is my hotline number now that I run with the team. 24-hour hotline for help. At that time, we just had, in 2017, the human trafficking. It was a text. We made it look like a barcode, very discreet. It was a piece of paper, really, they could rip off and put in their pocket. And then we'd say, hey, do you want a bracelet? So, of course, we're gifting them all these things, but we're trying to create this safety and this bond with them of safety and trust, to let them know, hey, we just want to let you know, because that was our purpose, to let them know this is a text for the human trafficking hotline. Anywhere in the nation, if you're anywhere and you need help to get out, you're in a bad situation, you just text that number. But then we went a step further, and hey, if you need help tonight, we have a team that can get you off the street. And we did that multiple times in that track in Santa Ana. And we had it discreetly set up to look like the girl was being picked up by a John, but it was really one of our guys. And then one of us would be laying down in the back seat, and we would let her know that. We would, no surprises, and let her know there's going to be female in the back seat, kind of laying down, laying low, but we're going to get you out of there. So we had multiple times we had the opportunity to get a victim out. And that was those moments we look for. And I
Gosh.
remember one specifically, if I can share this one. It was the first contact the night I was out on. Sometimes we'd be in groups. I was out just by myself that night with, of course, my security guard there. And a young girl says, I want to get out. And it was like, oh, I go, yes, we can help you out. She goes, I'm pregnant. And she didn't look, pregnant yet, but I said, yeah. And so she was ready. So we put our whole team into motion, got her in the car, got her safety, took her phone. We put it in what we call a Faraday bag. And what that is, it's a bag so the trafficker can't locate it. We have her turned it off, but it helps with not being able to follow for location, for safety. And we're collaborating with a agency in Orange County, a confidential agency that we take them to. And we were able to take in the middle of the night. And, we had that collaboration with them. But I'll never forget, Heather, I got her in. By this time, it's like 1 a.m. and we're getting her food and all of these things to get her comfortable and all that. And I'm doing the intake as I'm letting her relax and all that. And she's at this moment in time, I'm checking in with her. How you doing? She said, hey, I'm okay. And then she goes, you know what? She goes, I have to ask you something. And I said, what? She goes, do you think the baby's mine? And I said, yeah. And I said, and it was late. I go, and I knew I heard her right, but I wanted to make sure. So I said, what did you say, hon? She goes, do you think the baby's mine? And what that tells me with my psychological background is the trauma had so much gotten to her on her layers. She didn't even identify that she was pregnant with this child. It was like a disassociative kind of reaction. I see it as. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm just saying that's the way I interpreted it. And I said, yes, honey, it's going to be fine. So again, taking this time, working them through their trauma, finally getting her to a safe place. And then you think that it's going to go forward and you've got them out, right? A couple hours later, because we don't force them to stay, she had called someone up, someone picked her up, and she was gone.
Oh.
So there's the heartbreak about when you're trying to help them, and it's just a reality. It's not their fault. It's not their fault, but it will happen multiple times. Sometimes they will go back to their same situation, their same trafficker, maybe 6, 7, 8 times until they finally get to that point they're done. And hopefully they're still in a good place. They can get past that and be on a new journey.
Wow,
Yeah.
Sandy. Okay, there's so much you just said. That's like, wow. Okay. That young gal asking you if the baby was hers is wild.
I know.
Okay, so I was so excited that you got her out.
Yeah, me too.
And
we were too.
I know. And so
Yeah.
let's just talk about that because they haven't all gone back. You have gotten girls that have gotten out and are now thriving and doing amazing things.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. God bless you for doing that, Sandy.
And just being at the right place divinely at the right time,
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
That's it's timing. It's a God thing.
it is.
And wow, just tremendous work. But I want to back up for a second too. You have this hotline. So it's not the National Human Trafficking Hotline anymore, correct?
It's not the one we use. I mean, that's still out there and God bless them and they're nationwide, but this is our own hotline.
So you now have your very own hotline.
Yes.
So this is, I'm going to guess what you're telling us about when you're out in Santa Ana and you're out in South Figueroa in downtown LA, risking your life on Friday nights, right? In the middle, like 1, 2 in the morning, you're walking on the streets, passing out granola bars and water and bracelets that have a human trafficking hotline number. Right? You did this every Friday night?
Well, no, we still don't. We have teams that do. What happened with that piece, Heather, COVID hit. That's track in Santa Ana. That shut down. But what has come with our hotline, and because one of the things I learned when I worked at that time, when they say they want it out, I was new then. It's like, what kind of resources are there for them? And I discovered they didn't have a lot of resources. So
yeah, I mean, what do you do? It's not like you can take them home with you. You can't take them all home. It's not like a stray cat.
Exactly. So I found one of my passions was to build resources and network with other organizations. So I did a lot of research and old school reaching out via phone. Hey, introduce what we're trying to do. Hey, how can we support you? So I built this huge network, and it's ongoing still, of resources because not everything's the right fit for each victim that calls in. And so we've built this network of resources to collaborate with. So even though we're kind of seeming like we're based in Southern California, I'll get calls in from Minnesota. I'll get calls in from Texas. I'll get calls in from back east because somehow, thankfully, with me reaching out to Rescue America in Texas, I've collaborated with them and said, hey, if you need help on the other side. So it's getting out there, which is what we want. Because one of the things that was a little disheartening to me is that some girls would say that they would call the hotline or National Human Trafficking or a hotline, and because I don't want to discount any of them, but they'll either been put on hold or it will go to voicemail. And one thing I said to myself, if we're going to have our hotline, it will never go to voicemail. It will never be put on hold. So our team, we're trained with trauma-centered approach, how to work with the victims, but no matter what time of day or night that they call us, they're going to get a trained female answering that call, and it will never go to voicemail.
Okay.
Because if they get that courage to do that, someone's going to answer that phone.
Yeah. And sometimes, like you said, timing's everything.
Yeah.
You got to catch that girl at the moment. She's just been beaten. She's just been sold in her mind. This is the last time I'm going to let this happen.
Yeah.
And I want out now. And when you call, it's like, hold please, or you don't get an answer. You maybe lost the opportunity. So this is amazing. What is your hotline called?
It's called the Dream Hotline, as we call it. Just because when I had the chance to get a number, and it was perfect, because when we were on the streets, we would ask the girls, hey, what's your dream? So that was part of our conversation. So when I was dedicating my time to get our own hotline, you see the numbers out there, and I go, oh, this one says 855-85-DREAM. I go, I want that one.
855-85-DREAM. Say it again.
855-85-DREAM is what it is.
So anytime, 24 hours a day, if someone calls 855-85-DREAM, they
dream
will reach a live person who can help them get out of the life. That's what they call it, the life, right?
Get out of
they
the
can
life.
get out of human trafficking. And either you or couple other
we have intake specialists, and those are ones that will take the initial information and then I'll pass it over to one of us that are going to actually work the case. So there's like 4 of us that work the case, and we have about 6 intake specialists. So I'm always looking to see if anyone else wants to be a part of that job too, because it's really important. Because like you're saying, Heather, it could be that one moment in time, that can happen. And
if they call, Sandy, if they call, you actually, like, let's say they're in a hotel room, right? And their trafficker's just beating them, and he's gone out for a soda or whatever.
Right.
And it's that moment.
Right.
You can then, you have enough resources where you can get a team to go in and rescue her.
Exactly. What we call that, Heather, is an extraction. And of course, we're not going to put my team at risk. So there has to be a lot of wisdom when you plan an activity like that. I brought an outside team in one time with that very thing. There was a gal that called me, of all days, on 4th of July. She was in a hotel, and she was in a desperate situation. So right then you go, oh, I'm not going to go to hold of anyone, let alone in all of that. So another God moment that happened, I just happened to do some resource calls. I took her intake. He was there, but she knew he was going to be leaving, coming in and out. And I said, okay, I'm going to work on this right now. I got a team come out that was on their way in by chance that had police background. And they said, we'll work it, Sandy. And I said, absolutely. Because I is either going to be my team planning an extraction. And when I say that, you always want to get them to a planned location of safety that's away from the situation that they're at. And you've got to work it very carefully, because you don't want to put them at risk or any one of my team at risk. So we've done that before, but this just was a godsend moment. This team was coming in. They go, no, we'll take it. And they managed to take over and work it. So when that trafficker left, they were able to pick her up. We worked in tandem, and we could not find her an aftercare, which is another challenge, Heather, that we're dealing with, is enough aftercare agencies that are available for human trafficking victims. That's another issue.
So that's where there's a need, is for aftercare, because once you get them out, then you got to house them somewhere.
Exactly.
And help them to get back on their feet. Right.
Exactly.
And it's really hard. That's one thing I don't think people realize is, like, you can get them out of the hotel room, but then what if they left a really terrible, tragic situation, or they don't have family, or there's no home for them to go home to, or they left because they were being sexually assaulted by their own relatives. We don't want to send them back to more abuse. So you have to find a place where they can be housed. You have to peel back all the layers of the onion of the psychological trauma that they've suffered. And I think one thing that's important to mention is the money issue, because oftentimes the traffickers are taking the bulk of the money that these girls are making. But in their mind, they're making tons of money, right? Because they're getting handed, wads of cash.
Yep.
Being paid in cash. Most Johns who are paying for women aren't paying on their credit card. They're paying in cash. And in their mind, like, now I'm going to go work at, Subway and make, 16, 17 bucks an hour. And that's a hard pill for someone who's able in an hour to make a few $100s.
Yeah. Or $1,000.
Or $1,000.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. What are the rates?
I was working
Just
with
varies,
young female, and it probably varies, obviously, of depending on how they're marketing them as a product. And the younger ones are going to get more, and even sadly, the ones that have this sick, twisted mind of even a younger child, they're going to get more for that too. So, but the sad thing about that, though, they're a product in the eyes of the trafficker. So if they get less attractive or something happens or they're beat up, they could be tossed aside, because they're not going to make any money off them anymore. And that's the sad reality of the situation. They're not seeing themselves as that. They've been woven into this dream that no, he's not going to do that. He loves me. But the truth of that is it's not the way it is.
There's not one ounce of love when you're selling someone else for money. That's not love. That's manipulation. No.
And what you said was true. Their trafficker is going to take care of her and buy her the stuff and make her look good as a product, but he's holding on to that money, and that keeps her captive. So you're right. Rather than working at Subway, getting $17 an hour, I'm making all this money, but are you really, first of all? And second of all, look at the danger these poor women are being put through, because even though one might think, well, they're making money, they're selling themselves with sex, these women are being violently raped sometime and having guns put to their head, or objects, and I won't even go into there, that are just not just even right to even think about. Yeah, and it's horrific. It's horrific. So when you're talking about
murdered too, let's not forget that. There are a lot of these women that go missing, and we just recently filmed an episode on the podcast about some serial killers that were raping and murdering prostitutes. So it happens, and it's a very, very dangerous business. It's dangerous on so many levels, especially for the girls, risking their lives and their safety and their health with sexually transmitted diseases.
Oh yeah.
I know for a fact, they pay more if you're not wearing contraceptive, condoms, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And and it's not even if you, dodge, HIV, there's 1,000 other diseases that you can get. Hepatitis C.
Exactly.
Some incurable diseases. And so, it's really, really a tragic thing.
Yeah. And to even go back a little bit, if I may, on the aftercare, as you're talking about in the places. The irony of all this is that, as we were saying, this is like the fastest growing organized criminal activity in the United States too. That's why people need to wake up and see that this is an issue. So then you look at that piece of it, and then you see that when you try to find care for them, there's not enough human trafficking places for them. So there's a huge imbalance with the need. And because when you think about, of course, there's violence involved with it, but I have a whole, plethora of resources for domestic violence too, because I keep those for my team as well, just in case we're crossing that. We want to always help a caller on our hotline. But that's one level of trauma. But human trafficking is a whole nother level. They, like you were saying, they need therapy and they need to see their value and worth. They're coming with so much more than a domestic violence situation. Not like that isn't bad, because it's horrible and it should never happen. But a trafficking person that has been sold over and over and over again, their needs are so much more deep rooted. And so when, like I said, as our team, we're searching, sometimes I have searched weeks, even into months, trying to find a location that is open and available and has the ability to take a victim. And if they have a couple children that have been, they've been impregnated either by the trafficker, usually, to hold on to them.
So the trafficker will get the girls pregnant.
Yeah.
She'll have the baby, and that way she's kind of,
Locked into it even more.
locked into him forever.
Exactly. Because there was a situation a couple summers ago as I was working, it was another eye-opening situation. I think Melissa's here. And it was a call from Chicago. And it was that typical scenario. It was two young girls that met as foster sisters when they were 13. And one was named and I won't use their names, confidential. But anyway, they caught my eye. One was 24 and one was 26. And she had a criminal case against her trafficker, the one did. But both of them had kids. One had 3 kids and one had 2. 5 and 7 and 5, 7 and 2 between the 2 of them. And she was telling me, so it took me months to try to find a location, but to let you know what happened with that one, she said to me that he intentionally would get her girls pregnant, and she was one of many, to hold on to her. And he was part of a gang. She was being intimidated by people calling her, trying to get her to drop the case against him. Super intimidating, things would be happening. They would park in front of the house, all that. So she would play the game, but she was scared. And we were trying to get her out of that area where she was trying to testify, which is another thing like, oh my gosh, don't they keep it more safe? But it was what it was. And during this time, we finally did get them moved to a safe location in the state of Texas. But all that to say, one of the things that's heartbreaking too, Heather, that we didn't touch about is just the branding that goes on. And she asked me, of course, in our conversation.
Okay, the listeners don't know what it is, and you're talking super fast, so I'm going to slow you down.
Okay.
Okay, because what you're saying is fascinating, and everybody wants to hear it. So, you were saying the branding.
Yes. Yeah.
What is branding for those that don't know?
And I apologize. I got to back up a little bit. I'm so used to using some of these terminology, I forget. Branding is when a trafficker will get their victim tattooed, almost like a farmer brands his cattle as ownership. And one of the things that are indicators are things like a crown tattoo, which is visible. And the crown would signify him being royalty. And sometimes the trafficker will put his initials, or another one that's common is DLA, Daddy's Little Angel. And so those are things to look for when you're trying to assess if someone's even a victim, to identify them. It could be cash signs, money signs, behind their ear, in discreet places, on their body. But it's all a way that a trafficker will own their victim.
They'll actually get them tattooed with their name, or
exactly.
In some cases, they actually do physically have that branding where it's a hot iron brands them.
Yeah.
I've actually seen that on a couple girls.
It's just heartbreaking. And the reason I brought it up is because I just to finish that one story, not because I hadn't seen her. She was calling in on the hotline. And with that being said, she said, hey, Sandy, she said, is there ways I could get rid of my tattoos? And she was only 24. I said, yeah, of course there's places to do that. Sometimes they'll try to eliminate, or they'll change it into something else, like something more beautiful, something that represents their new journey. And she just shared with me, she said, because he branded his moniker across my chest area and down my arm, and then on the side of my face he had his name tattooed.
Oh my
so
God.
Every day, that's why I bring that up. I mean, of course I wasn't seeing her, but look at what she's dealing with every day as she gets up, looks in the mirror to try to get ready. There's that reminder every day that I own you, or the horrific journey, the chapter she's been in her life that she can't forget about when seeing that every day.
Wow. Were you able to get the tattoo removed, I hope?
I don't know. I know when I follow them to another location, I do the best. Sometimes they don't always divulge the extra stuff, but I try to provide, because we do collaborate so strongly with other organizations to say, hey, we're here to help. And one of the ones I know it's called, I'm not trying to put out a plug for them, but Survivors Inc. is one that I know does help trafficking victims.
Oh, put the plug out. I want.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
the whole point, Sandy, just to stop you, the whole point of this podcast is to bring out and shine light on people who are doing amazing things to help people. And you are incredible. The fact that you dedicate your life to going out there on the weekends, this is your time that you spend. You don't get paid for it. It's all for free out of the goodness of your heart to go try and help these girls. And just to save one girl is going to make it all worth it.
It does.
And
it really does.
It's got to be incredibly fulfilling, but also incredibly sad when the gal goes back to the life.
Right.
and it, you gotta try again, right? Keep trying.
You got to keep trying. One thing I tell my team though is sometimes that can be discouraging, but in order to help like counsel and mentor them along that journey of feeling let down that they went back, is to know they might have been that one voice at that one moment in time that made a difference, that showed them that unconditional love that no one else had shown them before, because many times they've come from very broken environments. They've foster care, they didn't see the love from their family, never had a birthday party, no one hugged them or told them that they loved them. So I try to give them that nugget of truth that you might have been that one person, and you know what, our number's still out there, and made that difference. And so I feel like that's the way you kind of get through all that, to know that it's not about you. They didn't, it's just about them still dealing with that journey. And because otherwise, people would probably give up. And I don't want people to give up, and I don't give up. And either, as far as just saying, we're going to still make a difference. And because if we give up, Heather, it's like we're letting them win. And
we're letting the traffickers win if we give up.
My mission is no, not on my watch.
Not on my watch.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, okay, you've just given us so much great information, but Sandy, so these beautiful, gorgeous bracelets that we have here, I don't know if anybody can see them, but they're multicolor. Can you see them on the video? Okay, so we have them in fuchsia and green, and they're just gorgeous.
Favorite colors. Yeah.
And they all have little charms.
These do. And the purpose of these, Heather, is when I remembered we were on the streets giving out bracelets, they were kind of blingy ones. I wanted to continue this journey. And one of the ways I bring community awareness is making something really beautiful. I just really work hard to find beautiful gemstones. I'm up all hours of the night making these. Is super fun. I know it sounds probably
so you
weird,
hand make these.
I hand make all of these, yeah. And I try to make it really fun, but I want to have quality. But then when I get out, because I want to create this community awareness, is I get into these markets, and then people, oh, these are beautiful. Then I tell them the reason we're doing this. And because I point out this is a hotline number on this charm, and your purchase of this is not even, they're just getting a pretty bracelet that they like, and they can take the charm off if they want, but they're so touched that it's for a good cause. And they know that that money to purchase that is going, because 100% of all those proceeds go back into making more bracelets, and for me to order more of these charms.
Okay, so these bracelets, these gorgeous bracelets that you make in all these different colors with these charms, you hand make them.
Yes.
You put your hotline number on here. It says on this little thing, DREAM, right?
Yep.
1-855-85-DREAM.
Yep.
That's a 24-hour hotline number that anyone who's in the life and is being forced to do anything that they don't want to do can call. And Sandy has the resources and the people who love and care about the people out there who are being sold by evil people who have lost their way.
Yeah.
That they think it's okay to sell someone. And those of you who are purchasing women have lost your way, and you need to stop.
Yeah.
Because it's inhumane. But this hotline number can get you out of the life. There is a team that is dedicated to come and rescue you, get you out of the life, and find a safe place for you to stay. And I personally work on the board of trustees for a nonprofit that helps give scholarships to women to go back to school and get educated so they can find a legitimate way to make money that doesn't involve them having to sell their bodies or their soul,
right?
And where they're not being physically harmed or forced to do anything they don't want to do.
Right.
So Sandy, you sell these bracelets. How much are the bracelets?
They're $25 a piece.
$25, and all 100% of the proceeds go back to making more bracelets.
Exactly.
So you can spread awareness. But just so you know, these bracelets are also used and passed out. I have purchased some.
Yes, you have, Heather. Thank you.
I'm not saying I bought bracelets. I'm saying, but the whole point of me purchasing them, because I know about your hotline and I know about the issue, is when I see a girl on the street, I just keep some in my car. And if I see a girl in Santa Ana on my way to the courthouse or the way to jail to visit someone, I will hand them a bracelet and let them know, hey, put this on. There's a hotline number. If anybody's ever forcing you to do something that you don't want to do, or you know someone who's forcing you to do something you don't want to do, call that number and there's help.
Right. On my website, I have, it's called the Dream Charm Club. And we have ladies or people that have signed up for it every month. They get, for $25, a new bracelet. And I kind of make it even a little bit more special of the theme. It could be 4th of July and things like that. And so they love it. It's like a fun surprise they get. But they do that very thing, Heather. They keep them, because I said, you keep it, you guys, you gift it. But it's also a conversation piece to have on and just say, oh, what's this about? And again, make those conversations keep going, because we need to create this awareness. And the last thing I want to mention.
What's your website before we go on?
Yeah, it's projectshieldusa.org.
Projectshieldusa.org.
Yes. And because Project Shield, that's my headliner. So when you go on that website, what you're going to see is the prevention education piece. So I just want to highlight that one point before we even finish this podcast.
Yes.
Because my background is a school counselor, I realized as I was getting to know more about this field, they're targeting our kids, right? 12 to 14. That is the age group I was working with. So just briefly, I was looking to see what programs that were out there, what kind of education was out there in the schools. And it seemed to be kind of sparse. It seemed to give a lesson plan to a teacher who wasn't working the front lines, that wasn't an expert in the field. So I kindly had it on my heart to finally say, I'm going to create my own program. So the last year and a half, 2 years, I put together a comprehensive program to launch into middle schools and to high schools that is taking every stakeholder involved, the administration, the teachers, the staff, of course, assemblies for the kids, and educating them to know what to do if they see something, going on with a student. And then working with the counselors, because that was my position, working with them to know how to work with a child that might be at risk. So it's I haven't seen any programs like that out there before. It's very streamlined. It's a very dynamic. It's getting in with a very powerful message, and even letting parents know, because parents don't know. They don't know the games their children on. And the piece that is most concerning to me, a parent will think their child is safe in the privacy of their own room. They don't know their child could be being groomed in the privacy of their own room because someone is online with them that they don't know about. So I don't know if we have time to go in sextortion, Heather, and that's maybe for another day, but the sextortion piece is having them being streamed for either financial sources, which they'll do for boys more often, or for material, which they will streamline for girls so they can make money off it in the pornography world, which is a whole nother level.
That's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So they're using the cell phones, and the girls up in their bedroom, and they don't even...
Or boys. Yep.
They're in their bedroom, and they're like, hey, you can make some money. Make this video, and then the trafficker's making the money off the videos, and then...
No, not quite like that. Let me back up. What it is, they coerce them and act like they're somebody they're not. They pretend to be, like, for example, there's one I'll just briefly talk about this one. It's a young man whose parents are telling a story because they want the story to be out, because they don't want that to happen to any other child, because his story didn't end well. 17-year-old boy named Jordan DeMays, and he was high school, football player, good-looking kid, senior year, basketball, all of that. And someone online was pretending to be a cute girl and kind of said that kind of like provocative picture. Now you send yours kind of thing. So he thought it was the cute girl. He sends it back. In a matter of seconds, the table turned. It was 3 men in Nigeria, on the other side of our world, who was using that to coerce him and then blackmailing him, saying, if you don't send us all the money you have right now, we're going to put this out on your social media. And so the sad thing for the boys, and why we need prevention education in our schools, boys get shamed. And then, so he said, all he had was $300. He sent that to them, and then he thought, okay, I'm good. Well, that doesn't end there. And so they asked for more, and he didn't have more. And he said, I don't have any more. I'm going to kill myself. And they go, fine, do it. Within hours, in the privacy of his own home, he took a shotgun and took his own life.
Are you kidding me?
So
this is terrible.
What I'm trying to say, I know it's
my heart
heartbreaking
on my own podcast.
And the sextortion of boys is going rising because it doesn't take much for a trafficker. They just comb the internet and look for vulnerable things, become their friend, and they're not who they say they are. That's where, for my prevention education, I want to teach.
We need to teach these kids in the schools.
We need it in the school. And the crazy thing is, Heather, California law, AB 1227, we're supposed to have this in the schools. When I left my position in 2016-17, that law came about. I had already stepped out of my position and didn't know anything about it because I wasn't asked to do any kind of prevention education with human trafficking. Now it's supposed to be. So I talk to educators in my networking and saying, do you guys have it in your school? And they'll say, well, they go online. It's kind of just dummied down so they could check the box that it's been done. Or I'll hear like a health teacher or a PE teacher get handed a lesson plan and the reaction is, it's really boring. The kids are really bored. It's not engaging at all. Mine is so different because I know what needs to be done. That's why my big launch, and that you'll see it on my website, Project Shield. I love the USA part because I wanted it across the nation, but getting it out to every school. And I do it because the kids need to know. And it needs to be done with expert knowledge. We need to educate the educators just what they need to know in a very brief 50-minute presentation. That's all they need to know. The district needs to know why we're putting this program in our schools, because that superintendent might have a grandson, and this is a big deal. This can be happening anywhere with kids being on screens. And then I work with do the student assemblies, of course, powerful, engaging assemblies. Kids have assemblies all the time. It's not, so what my program does, in essence, doesn't disrupt anything going on in a school day. It's just the basic things of getting assemblies in and then coming to a back to school night. Parents need to know. No parent wants their child at risk. No. And they need to know these things. So this is my big launch. This is my big passion. Yes. Do we want to get the girls out? Absolutely. Well, we want to kind of like wet cement, get them out sooner than later, so that trauma doesn't harden in their psyche. But we want to also stop it from happening.
In the first place.
So that's the biggest launch I have right now. And to get that support, I need to get in. It's my new launch for
Project
this year.
Shield, that's what we
Project
need to support.
Shield, and that's my big thing. So if you go on my website, that's my headliner. And it says, traffickers hope we stay silent, because they do. And they can make money that way.
Well, we're not staying silent anymore.
Exactly.
If you want to support Sandy, who is the brightest light, I mean, come on, you are doing everything you can to help save our children and save these women and boys that are being sold and trafficked, and educate parents. So
it takes teamwork. Yep, absolutely.
It does.
Yeah.
But God bless you, Sandy, for being such a light in the darkest place. I mean, wow. That's a tragic story about that young boy. So where do they go? Let's one last time. Let me give you one more plug before we wrap it up today.
It would be projectshieldusa.org is my website. Again, you'll see that headliner. Funding is important, you guys, just so you know. And it is what it is with a nonprofit. A lot of stuff, of course, can come out of our own pockets, and I gladly do that, but that gets limited. We could do more getting that education out there with your support. When we do get those calls in, sometimes we don't have the funding to put them in a safe hotel. All these go to helping them transportation, helping them to safety, all of that. And what's really great, if you want to be a part of my network, because I understand people go, well, where is my funding going? Where does it really go, really, right? Well, I want you to know where it goes. And so you could be part of, every month I put out a newsletter and I capture the highlights of our work that we're doing, the things that are coming up that I might be doing with my team. You could be a part of that. I want you a part of that. Anyway, just let me know a little bit you want to contribute, or just say, hey, I want to be a part of everything what's going on with Project Shield and all that. Please reach out. We can never have not enough voices when we're talking about this area of need. And again, I believe my biggest mission right now is get that prevention education in the schools. It doesn't need to be that hard. We just need to get that out there and have the opportunity to protect our kids, because there's no parents out there want their kids not to be safe, and we want to protect them.
Amen. Amen. Well, God bless you, Sandy,
you,
for
Heather.
doing what you're doing.
Thank
you. And I just love you, and I love everything that you're standing for.
Thank you,
and thank
Heather.
you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, I feel
I hope
honored.
anyone who's listening has a heart to help these women, help Sandy's organization. And I'm going to pass out as many bracelets as I can and try to help you in any way that I can, Sandy. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that concludes our episode with Sandy Pendleton-Dorton, who is shining a light in the darkest places. Join us for our next episode here on Defeating the Darkness, where you are going to hear the inside scoop from an actual human trafficking survivor, a gal that was actually turned out, like we've been talking about today, and has overcome the darkness herself, and is trying to give people some inside scoop and knowledge and education so that we can help prevent this from happening to anyone else. Yeah. So stay tuned for the next exciting episode of Defeating the Darkness. And until we meet again, if you can't find the light like Sandy, be the light like Sandy.
Yeah.